Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board for June 16, 2020. I would like to call the meeting to order tonight and acknowledge the meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin territories. I would like to thank the Algonquin Nation for hosting us on their land. I would like to know, I'd like to have a mover to approve the agenda this evening. Trustee Huff, thank you very much. Are there any changes to the agenda? And seeing no changes to the agenda, I'd like to call a question on approval of the agenda.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just one clarification.
Yes, Executive Officer Drew.
Sorry, I've lost my camera here. Just wanted to let you know, we did have an agenda item. I really lost my camera. Minor policy revision on the concussion. And I regret to say we had a bit of a mix up today about whether that was coming on this agenda or the 22nd. And so we don't have that item ready for you tonight, but it will be available on the 22nd.
All right, so we are not covering off item 6.2 reports 20-048 minor revisions.
Correct.
Can I have a mover to approve the agenda as such? Trustee Schwartz, and all those in favor of approval of the agenda? And that passes. So thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to agenda item number 3, briefing from the chair. Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin by saying during the past month, we've seen the devastating impact of anti-Black racism. Too many people and communities in the United States and in Canada continue to experience racism and injustice. The Ottawa-Carleton District School Board has a strong commitment to end inclusion. We acknowledge that we, all of us, including trustees, have work to do within our system. As a school district, we are committed to challenging ourselves to examine privilege and question how we can make changes, and I mean real measurable changes, to eliminate racism from within our system. We want schools to be places where everyone has an opportunity to work and learn in spaces of respect and belonging. Parents may have questions about how to tackle these difficult subjects with their children, and I recommend you visit our website for more information and a number of resources to help you discuss these issues. Secondly, in June, the OCDSB recognizes the National Indigenous History Month. It's a time to reflect on the history, contributions, culture, and strengths of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Opportunity to learn about, celebrate, and honor Indigenous knowledge, heroes, and ways of knowing. As mentioned in the land acknowledgement, we are thankful to the Algonquin Nation for hosting us on this land. The OCDSB is committed to the calls to action recommended by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The district works with Indigenous students, parents, and partners to implement and monitor the delivery of Indigenous education in an inclusive and equitable manner that builds our culture of caring. June is also Pride Month, an opportunity to celebrate diversity while learning about the contributions, achievements, and histories of 2S LGBTQ+ individuals and communities. Education must be inclusive to everyone. We want all students and staff to feel safe and welcome. While there may not be parades this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we do send our best wishes to all those who are celebrating Pride. And finally, I would like to extend my congratulations to student trustee Prasith Wijawara, who is a winner of the first ever Ontario Public School Boards Association Student Trustee Scholarship. This scholarship recognizes an outstanding initiative accomplished by a student trustee, which has had a positive impact for students in their board. Prasith won for his work spearheading a report and consultation asking Ottawa City Council to improve public transit bus services for students. A grade 12 student at Bell High School, he will be pursuing a Bachelor of Civil Engineering in Public Transportation at the University of Waterloo, where he plans to work on improving transit systems. Only 2 students were selected for this award from across Ontario, which comes with a prize of $500. Congratulations, Prasith. We're proud of you. And that concludes my briefing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And just before we go on to questions for the chair, I see that there is someone who has identified themselves as iPhone on our screen. And if you could unmute yourself and please identify who you are. Okay, I will deal with that in a sec, but right now we have a question from Trustee Bell. Go ahead, Trustee Bell.
I'm sorry that my hand was up. No question for me. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much. And seeing no questions for the briefing from the chair, we're going to move on to briefing from the director. So, Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So we are at, oh, now I've just lost my notes here. Just give me 1 second. That's what happens with a touch screen. So through you, Mr. Chair, we're busy preparing for the end of the school year. A message was sent out to parents last week with a reminder about retrieving personal belongings and how to access report cards online. So far, more than 23,000 families have registered for the online report card portal. If parents and students have any questions, they can contact their teacher or their principal for support in getting this set up. Capping off 2020. Signs are now in front of OCDSB secondary schools celebrating the class of 2020 and will remain on site until the end of June. Graduating students are welcome to take photos in front of these signs, respecting, of course, physical distancing guidelines per our emergency measures. Elementary schools will also be hosting virtual events to highlight students moving on to next year. If you have grad messages that you want the school and the district to share on social media, please use the hashtag capping off 2020 and hashtag OCDSB to tag your school. We will share these on school and district accounts. Good news regarding the Schulich Scholarship. It brings great pleasure to share that Nepean High School student Zachary Fine has been selected to receive a $100,000 Schulich Leader Scholarship to study engineering at the University of Toronto this fall. Zachary Fine was nominated for his outstanding academic achievements in STEM studies and for his volunteerism and entrepreneurial endeavors in technology innovation. This is the first nominee to win a Schulich Leader Scholarship at Nepean High School. Such a wonderful achievement. Congratulations, Zachary. And that is my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? And seeing none, let's move on to the next agenda item. And seeing as how we have no delegations, we'll move on to matters for action. Item number 6. And that starts with report 20-051, Special Education Plan 2019-2020. Director, would you like to introduce the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And so annually, we are required as a school board to bring forward the special education plan. Trustees and public will notice that on the cover of the plan, it signifies 2019-2020. And so the irony of it, that is not an error. The irony of it is that the plan is brought in hindsight as opposed to foresight, and simply because that is the way it is that the reporting is structured through the ministry. We have with us today Superintendent Simmons and Assistant Principal Amy Hanna, who are going to take us through the report as well as the appendix that came with it. And I'd like to offer my congratulations when this was presented to the Director's Executive Council several weeks ago. We recognized the very detailed and thoughtful work. And if trustees were to compare from year to year, it would be clear that there is certainly reflection and growth that is demonstrated. And we do anticipate that continued reflection and growth will come out of this work. So I will pass it at this point to Superintendent Simmons to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Director. And Mr. Chair, through you, very happy to be joined by Assistant Principal Hanna as we talk about our annual special education plan. This is, as the director mentioned, this is an ongoing piece of work in order to make it more user-friendly. So on the one hand, there is the ministry compliance aspect of the report where we have to meet certain standards and present certain information. But one of the things that we strive to do on an ongoing basis is try to make the document more and more accessible to parents. So we do have to submit it to the ministry, but we also recognize that it's an important document that can be referenced by parents to understand a little bit more about the provision of special education programs and services in the district. One of the key roles of our Special Education Advisory Committee is to engage in an annual review of the document, and we have done that over the course of this year during our monthly CAC meetings. In addition to getting key input from the members of the committee around how we might make things a little bit clearer, areas that we might want to work on to flesh out or to emphasize in a little bit of a different way. Our work with SEAC really has been quite fruitful as we're able to engage through the process of reviewing the standards in a discussion around our thoughts and thinking as it relates to issues related to special education programs and services. At our last SEAC meeting, we did present this report, and SEAC did provide a motion for trustees. I'm going to ask Assistant Principal Hanna to talk about a couple of the key changes that we just want to make sure we draw your attention to in this year's version of our special education plan. And At the end of that, we'll be looking for somebody to move the motion at the end of the report, as those are key pieces that need to be submitted to the ministry for approval. This is so we have to submit in July, and we will very much be interested in hearing the comments and the conversations as we go through the discussion. But please be aware that significant changes and edits at this time are not possible given the time constraints that we're in. However, we will absolutely take those comments and questions and suggestions under advisement if we're not able to incorporate them prior to our submission in July. So I'll ask Assistant Principal Hannah to take us through some of the key areas.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to highlight some key areas that we have provided sort of a deeper review in a sense, because we were realizing some key information was either not clear enough or some information was required. So I just wanted to share with you that the first section, which is one of the standards we're required to review, is the Specialized Health Support Services in School Setting standard. And of the document of the PDF, it is on page 37. We're very pleased to share that this year we worked in collaboration with the manager of the local health integration network. This work has been ever changing over the last few years, being involved with the LIN and or CHIO and the different individuals who are overseeing those different health supports that are so very important in our school settings. And so this year it was really a wonderful opportunity for us to work in tandem with that individual to ensure that all information is as accurate as possible, so that when our students and when our staff and our families and of course anyone else who requires that specific information references that section, that it is as up to date as possible. So we're very pleased to share that it has been reviewed by that individual, and we continue to hope to have that partnership as we move forward. The other section is related to the early identification procedures and intervention strategies found on page 18 of the PDF document. This is one of those opportunities where we think this is there will be continued review and continued information to be shared in years to come. As we know, we're on a journey, and annually we do review the information to find it to be more user-friendly, but also to really meet the needs of the students and families that we serve in our district. And to be very concrete, we have collaborated with the team in program and learning to be looking at how we can provide sort of a system approach about that intake process for kindergarten. But also we were noticing that some of the voices of our English language learners were not being captured appropriately in this section. So we really have worked in tandem with the vice principal of ESL to ensure that we are really capturing that language and that appropriate transition planning for those individuals and students who come and join us in our district, and so that we can best serve them in their schools and where they're learning. But finally, we also know from the Right to Read inquiry that's ongoing that there'll be information that will be coming forward that will really inform this standard in particular as it relates to early intervention and early identification. So more to come, but something that we are aware of and cued to. The third section is related to the IPRC, and that is on page 25 of the PDF document. And this again is just a clarification around some language of the process. We're always trying to make this a little bit more parent and guardian friendly, and of course to support our schools in doing this work. It is such a legislative process that sometimes the language that surrounds the process makes it unclear to individuals that are participating in it. So we really tried to provide a clarity of roles and responsibilities, as well as what the process should look like, sound like, feel like. And we have undertaken a review of the parent guide, and that is ongoing, but we hope to provide that updated link into the final submission that would go to the ministry. So right now, the link that you see is not the final document. So I would like to draw your attention to that work continues to be ongoing. The fourth section is related to the IEP, Individual Education Plan. That's found on page 91 of the PDF document. This is one of the sections that has undergone a huge transformation this year. We understand and know that there really is a lot of questions that get raised very fairly by the team and individuals at SEAC in those meetings related to sort of what is the process? How does one initiate an IEP? What is the role of the parent or guardian? What is the role of the school? And so in this section, what we've tried to do is really outline what's written in the Ministry of Education standards for developing an IEP. So everyone really has a clarity of the flow of what information needs to be gathered initially before an IEP is developed, and who is part of that work at each point of those journeys. And really the goal in the end is to clarify that the process is not intended to be linear, but really that it is a cyclical process. It's one that we're always reviewing and gathering information and coming back to. So you'll notice a large section has been added into that standard as well. There's also more emphasis on transition planning. Transition plans are required for students who have IEPs, and so that information was provided there, as well as the storage of IEPs. We needed to clarify how that very important information is kept and who has access to it. So we've included that detail as well. Finally, the last section that we've provided some clear, hopeful details to is related to the categories and definitions of exceptionalities on page 54 in the PDF document. And this is really, we noticed that there was a lack of clarity between these categories and definitions that are determined by the Ministry of Education, but how we as a local school district actually interpret and apply them in the IPRC process. So greater clarity about how that's supposed to unfold was provided into that standard to hopefully, again, provide clarity of understanding and information to the families and our community that we support. Just a little note to close off is around the fact that some of the information we are still gathering. So to be really concrete, we're still waiting to add some budget line items as it relates to the special equipment amount. So we will be adding that in the coming week. And then finally, just around IPRCs, we are required to provide a total of appeals and mediations and those types of statistics. And that's just, we're waiting until the end of the school year to provide that information as it evolves.
Thank you very, very much. This point, open the floor up to any questions on report 20-051s. Any questions, trustees, or any committee members? And seeing no questions. Oh, Trustee Bell?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me today, guys? Great. So this is my first time reading through one of these plans. So this is this 150 page document that you shared. And I will say that I had a really productive conversation with Mr. Simmons this week as he walked me through this. And I understand in the introductory section of what you just spoke to, there are efforts underway to make this more parent friendly because I think if I tried to put myself in the shoes of parents, if I'm going to look at this document to try and figure out what's the next step for my child, it's pretty dense and there's a lot of links to a lot of other documents as well. And I see people are nodding their heads. So I would just say again, I think the information that is found in here could likely be transmitted in a way that is better communicated, that's more simplified. So that's just the background for, I guess, a couple of questions. The first of which is on page 36, which is the wait list. So the wait list for learning support services. I found this a very important paragraph in what is a plan, but not really a plan document. So what we see here is central data for students waiting for speech language pathology, psychology, or social work assessment is not available at this time due to the impacts of labor disruptions and school closures. And my question is why is that not a priority? Why and how are we going to ensure that we have that data for as soon as possible so that adequate decisions can be made? I'll leave it at that for now, actually. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Through you, we are working with our IEP online provider to try and figure out a digital solution to the challenge. Currently, for us to gather that central data requires, it's a very manual process, which requires individual professional support services personnel and school-based personnel providing the data for us to be able to bring forward. So it's very labor intensive, and we didn't feel that we would be in a position to be able to ask that of our staff at this time during this year. And we continue to work with the provider of the digital tool so that we can figure out a way to have access to that that's not manual, because we're asked for that data often, and it's something that we would use to inform decision making. So working with our consultants, PCG, we're hopeful that we're able to move the needle forward on that a little bit further, so that we can have a digital record of where those wait lists are.
If I may, just to bring home the communication piece, are there efforts underway, or has there been thought given to potentially having this document in electronic format where you could interact with it, or another way of possibly communicating what I think is a really important document, very rich with a lot of information?
We can absolutely take that under advisement moving forward and working as we work to develop our parent portals and so on. The document is currently available online, but we could take a look at separating it out into its pieces once we figure out whether that's the best way to approach this document. We'll take that back.
Thank you.
One more question.
Yep.
Now, is there a plan, a special education? These are our objectives. This is what we're going to achieve this year. Is there something towards more on that side of a plan that exists within the board?
Mr. Chair, as part of our annual director's work plan and the work that we're doing to achieve the goals of the strategic district strategic plan, each department has produced items that they want to accomplish within the current year, with a view to achieving some of the strategic plan goals over the course of the 4 years of the plan. Many of those plans, insofar as learning support services work has been concerned, did experience a number of hiccups this year with respect to labor disruption and, of course, the closure. So we will be looking forward into the fall. What plans did we expect we were going to accomplish? For example, one was our learning support services operational review. When we weren't able to do proper consultation as part of that operational review, we made the decision that we should put that on hold for the time being. But heading into the fall, we'll be revisiting those plans and making decisions about what we can do to kickstart those activities again.
That's it for me now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Trustee Ellis.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 4 that the Special Education Plan 2019-2020 attached as Appendix A to Report 20051 be approved. I'd like to point out and thank the members of the Special Education Advisory Committee, SEAC, who are seized with this the entire year. They do a section at every meeting and are invaluable touchstones for the board in bringing this report forward. Also, like to point out that at the last SEAC meeting, they indicated their comfort with this report, and just congratulations to the staff and to our volunteers who've made this a very rich document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Ellis, for moving that. And seeing as there is no further discussion, would you like any additional comments as a wrap up?
None needed, Chair. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I'd like to call a question on receipt of this plan. So all those in favor of receiving the special education plan via report -20-051, and all those in favor?
Blackburn in favor.
And thank you very much. And that passes unanimously. So moving on. Item 6.2 is for a further meeting as per the approval of the agenda. And moving on to receipt of the statutory and other committees. I'd like to call for a mover to accept the SEAC report of March 11th, 2020. Anyone? Trustee Ellis, thank you very much. Are there any errors and or omissions to this report? Trustee Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did in fact attend the 11th of March SEAC meeting as a guest. So the attendance list should include my name.
All right, thank you very much. Any further errors and or omissions? And seeing none, I'd like to call a question on the report as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? And abstentions? And that passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 1.2, the Special Education Advisory Committee's report of the 13th of May. I'd like to call for a mover to confirm acceptance of that report. Trustee Ellis. Thank you very much. By a microsecond. And are there any errors and or omissions to the report? And seeing none, I'd like to call the question on receipt of that report. All those in favor?
Blackburn in favor.
Opposed? And thank you very much, and that passes. And the next item, 7.3, the Special Education Advisory Committee report of the 10th of June, 2020, and it says partial. So I'd like to call for a mover to accept that report. Trustee Boothby, thank you very much. Are there any errors and or omissions to that report? Trustee Campbell?
Yes, actually, just a question. It's partial. So do we, how does this work? I don't know what's missing. Do we need to vote on this again later at a subsequent meeting when it's been completed, or how does this work?
Can you shed some light, perhaps, Executive Officer?
If I'm not mistaken, the partial report was provided so that you could see the comments from SEAC on the special education plan. So we will complete the report. It's been a long time since we did a partial report. We moved away from that practice several years ago. I believe that we will circulate it to trustees, and Manager Guthrie will clarify for me whether it has to go back on an agenda or not.
Thank you very much. Trustee Campbell?
Yes.
That's good. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has indeed been a while since we had a partial report, but the practice has been in the past has always been to receive the partial report, and then when the full report is available, again to review it and have a motion to receive it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Seeing no other comments, other than the fact that trustee Campbell and trustee Scott still have their hand up. No other errors and or omissions. Like to call the question on receipt of that partial report. All those in favor?
Blackburn in favor.
And opposed? And thank you very much. That passes. And moving on to item 8.1 in our agenda, matters for discussion, the COVID-19 update. And I'd like to call upon the director to provide the update. Madam Director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Trustees have received the COVID updates 1 through 10 in their package. We've been working to ensure that weekly trustees get a synopsis of where we are with our steps. But I did have an additional item to, or a few items to raise today in public board. So first of all, a huge thank you to our maintenance staff who began partial return to work and are now resuming full-time work in our schools and administrative buildings. There are a number of additional health and safety precautions that are in place to allow these employees to work and to ensure their safety and the safety of those around them. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to these employees. These folks are making the way ready for us to consider where it is that we will have access to our buildings. And so they're essentially our forerunners. And just like in every other circumstance where we need to have our facilities ready, whether it's after a snowstorm or other kinds of scenarios of that nature, it is our maintenance staff who make it possible for everyone to access safely. So a huge thank you to that group, because again, their work is so important, although albeit sometimes invisible to us in terms of their presence. Maintenance and design and construction staff are also working and visiting sites to access the work that needs to be done in terms of some of our facilities, upgrades, repairs, and additions. They are in contact with a building custodian prior to visiting to ensure that they won't be disrupting any of the access schedules. As I said, there are a number of parameters in place for people to access buildings. Also, access for staff to retrieve belongings, that is also underway. I'm pleased to advise that we've been able to provide access to staff so that they are able to retrieve items that were left in a hurry just before March break. And most of this has been happening over the week of June 8th through 12th, and it continues to, access continues through appointment. We also, and I mentioned this earlier, we have retrieval for students to access their belongings. Last week, we launched plans for the retrieval of student belongings, and we provided consistent parameters, and then schools were able to tailor the processes according to their local needs. So whether it be size or panel, so essentially a foundation was set that is consistent across the system with some capacity to localize and tailor according to school needs. All schools have this underway, and in many schools, students and parents have successfully retrieved their belongings already. End of year celebrations and graduation ceremonies will occur this fall. Some virtual celebrations are happening in June, and graduation signs are now posted in all secondary sites and the 2 CB sites. Graduating students will receive a graduation cap, a baseball cap, and a pennant over the next 2 weeks. And of course, we have summer learning plans for students, as we always do, although this year there are some adjustments. The ministry has announced new funding and expectations for summer programming, including programming for students with special education needs. Work on defining program offering is underway and more information will be shared shortly as we continue with our design. And then we are turning our minds, of course, as we always do in June, to opening in September. So we are starting to put our minds, we have been putting our minds to what the return to learning will look like. Staff continue to work on the reopening plans, schools administration and childcares with the childcare buildings, with the understanding that the ministry will be providing provincial direction late in June. Because that direction is not coming until late in June, staff certainly have been working to speculate, if you will, on what the needs might be. So meetings have been underway with various departments regarding reopening requirements and ordering of personal protective equipment, plexiglass signage, and so forth. We'll be sharing more information during the next 2 weeks as we continue to build our designs forward. It's really important for us to ensure that our trustees, our non-voting members at our table, as well as our public, is aware that we're making every effort to be as collaborative as we can, while we recognize that we also have to be expeditious in the planning. And so that is another piece. What that is taking time is to ensure that we're gathering voices as we can do. Report cards, we have developed a new parent portal to provide for a secure provision to report cards to parents. And as I noted in my comments earlier, more than 20,000 families have registered in the last week as we continue to reach out to families. And important to note, pertaining to our budget, GSN information that was expected from the ministry by earlier, we're now anticipating mid-June. We do not have information yet. And so we hope that by the board meeting next week, we'll be in a better position to provide an estimated timeline and process for budgeting. And again, we recognize that the connection between the last two items to COVID is, again, the closure, the school closure, and distancing preclude the printing and handing out of report cards, which is why we have gone to a digital platform. And again, much of the work that the ministry has undertaken with school boards has certainly been impacted by the school closure as a result of COVID. And hence that piece is connected to the COVID update. So that is my update for public committee of the whole, and I'm happy to take any questions. And we do have staff with us as well who are able to elaborate on certain aspects of this report if it's so required.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. And we have Trustee Ellis.
Thank you. It's regarding the summer school. And this is the first year that I've had a number of constituents calling me about their challenges in accessing summer school. I don't know if it's perhaps the year and the circumstances we're under, but I'm wondering, is there a waiting list? Is it larger than in other years, just ballpark? And yeah, so I'll leave it at that if I can get some information.
Thank you, Trustee Ellis. I was looking to see if I could see Superintendent Smith on. I'm not seeing her at the moment. What I can tell you is that we have shifted to a full online offering. So typically with summer school, we would have online e-learning combined with face-to-face, particularly for the Reach Ahead credits. We have gone to fully online. What has happened is that we have more than doubled the offering, but even by doing that, we still don't meet the equivalent credit offering that we would when we have a combined platform. So we have somewhat of a shortage in terms of the number of credits that are being offered albeit that we have expanded significantly. We do know that the uptake was very, very quick. And we have the local uptake first, and then opening up, because we're a part of consortium, that we do open spaces to our partners across the province. And so to my knowledge, I do know that we're full, but I can't give you a sense of the specific numbers in terms of our waiting list. So that's information that I'm able to get for you. We do also have, and most of the times trustees, I would imagine, would receive calls about reach ahead. So that's typically the area where we get the most parent interest. We do know that we are offering other summer programs, and the subscription to those are quite good. We have a 7 and 8 program, and we have a K-6 program that's supported through code. And we also have, for our secondary school students, an opportunity to recover credits or to enhance their grades. But in terms of, and again, all of it is being done virtually. In terms of a waiting list there, again, I would need to get that data for you, because I don't, at the top of my head, know where we are with that uptake at this point. But that will give you a sense of what the spread is for what we are offering and what the nature of the uptake is from an academic summer school point of view.
So we can also, just a clarification, accept students from other public school boards?
Yes.
Can we accept students from who aren't registered in one of the 4 public school boards?
Right, so we are a part of a consortium, which means that there are public school boards that are grouped together that share access. What school boards in the consortium do is we will open up our e-learning platform to our own students first, with the majority of credits. So there's a certain number that are reserved. And so what we will find is that there are times that OCDSB students might reach out to another school board to access an e-learning program that we might not be providing, and similarly others to OCDSB. So when it is you're part of a team, everyone needs to do their part. And so, yes, we open up to our students first, and the larger proportion of our credits are open to our students, with some reserved for other students who are in school boards that are a member of the public consortium.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear the province has provided some funding to help students with special education needs. I hope we're able to take advantage of that. It also raises a question on equity with the waiting list in this. I'm hoping perhaps in the future we can perhaps analyze how we're doing in assigning equitable, not equal, opportunities for students to summer learning. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you. To that point, Trustee Ellis, I think it's important to note that as we go into a significant shift in how it is that we offer summer learning, the staff have committed to establishing a mechanism to gather the data just around those very pieces that you've raised, as we anticipate that this could signal some changes to the way that we look at summer learning and summer opportunities. And in order to improve that and improve our service, we need to build in the gathering of the data out the gate. So the staff has, in the design, built in the opportunity to gather data on uptake, on impact, on demographic, and so forth, to be able to think about how it is we might adjust our planning and our offering for next year.
I'm very grateful to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Ellis. And we have Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much for the update, Director. And I just wanted to highlight and ask the question. I received the email today, OCDSB Summer 2020 EDP information. And within that, it clearly outlines that our extended day summer program will no longer be running, and that we will be limiting the community use of space within our schools. I just wanted to highlight that I've received, since the province has announced that childcare can go forth, I've received a number of emails from families that are looking for childcare, that are looking for a safe place to bring their children. And so when I start to think about specifically in my zone, Somerset, the Boys and Girls Club, for example, is so important to assisting the entire community and making sure that all of our many of our students are safe. And so my question is, are there any other opportunities where somehow over the summer, community partners and the board could come to some sort of agreement, or is it's off the table?
Thank you, Trustee Bell. So I'll begin the answer, and we do have Superintendent Carson and Superintendent Dua with us on the line. So I'll begin to answer, and if I leave anything out, I'm sure that they'll be able to fill in the gaps. There are a number of things, number of realities at work here. So firstly, when the ministry, when the province announces a reopening of childcare, the reference there, which is confusing to our public sometimes, is that it is our third-party childcare and our infant toddler program, which sits on a different platform, if you will, than our EDPs, which are governed by education. We have not been given directive from education to open EDPs, but the child cares, we have of course been given a green light from the province around that. That said, it's a green light with a whole lot of caveats and a lot of parameters, because the reality of the pandemic and COVID and the infectious nature of COVID-19 continues to be a reality. And so it's a question of balancing the opening with the opening of the economy, and we do recognize that. So far, our third-party providers have been given there has been outreach to our third-party providers to learn about what it is they are capable of doing from the point of view of the directives and the parameters that have been set by the province. That said, the trustee asked questions about, so what about other ways of engaging students and children in safe activity. I noticed the trustees stayed away from the word camp, but that's typically what that looks like. And we do also recognize that a part of our responsibility going into the reopening of school is getting our facilities ready. And so in order to do that, the facilities have to be available to our staff to be able to get them ready. And the parameters around which we would be able to provide access to our facilities is also a bit of a challenge to ensure that we're maintaining that safety piece. So that's the balance that we're trying to run. If my memory serves me from that memo, I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection when we went through and constructed that memo was we also talked about, there's some lovely birds coming in. We also talked about the consideration of need, and that while it is that we do have, we don't expect to be opening up our spaces, we do recognize that there's always, when you're a partner, you have to do your part. And so sometimes that the collaboration may result in an exception. That doesn't yield a promise to the trustee. But it shows that there is some level of openness and recognition that this is a challenging circumstance. I believe that it's the CFO that has the birds. So perhaps the CFO might fill in the blanks for anything that I've left out.
Mr. Chair, I'll be brief. We did look at this. We've been looking at the use of our buildings for the last 8 weeks for the summer. And as timelines shrank and shrank, and the recognition that we will be required to open buildings before the school year to help some students in transition, meant that we really were not able to recommend that we could safely accommodate the normal kinds of community use permits and camps with access to the inside of the buildings. There are a number of issues around how they could coexist with the programs that we carry out, the normal work that we have to do with the third-party licensed childcare operators. Their requirements are quite stringent in terms of who else can access the building. So we made a recommendation to senior staff, and it was approved that we would not be proceeding with those general permits. Having said that, the associate director does sit on I think it's a subcommittee of the Human Needs or Human Resource Task Force, and they are looking at summer issues. And we recognize that in those parts of the city where the city cannot provide a proper facility, or where other organizations can't provide that facility, that we are usually the place of last resort. And so we did say we would take a look at those on an exception basis. And we haven't had those organizations come forward yet. I fully expect we will. And we will probably end up with 1 or 2 sites that we can accommodate, as well as trying to make sure some of the other school boards are also able to open their facilities. It is a difficult time. Summer is always a challenge for us with trying to get our all of our usual work done in that 8-week period, as long as the special work related to this particular September. But I think we're all committed to serving those that need the help the most. And I know Brett and Ms. Ostrovchuk and I speak pretty regularly on this. And if that task force brings us something, we'll certainly find a way to try to make it work. I just don't know what that would look like yet.
That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Trustee Ellis, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question?
No, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much. And if I could beg the committee's indulgence for a minute, I also do have one question, and that is, are we still on track to receiving some further guidelines from the ministry at the end of this month regarding how the return to school protocol might look?
Yeah, so as far as we know, we are expecting those guidelines towards the end of the month, hopefully by the end of next week. That doesn't constitute a guarantee, of course. We do know that the last 2 communications that are typically established weekly, one with the chair of the board and the other with the directors, has not gone forward in these past several days because of other commitments that have drawn ministry staff away. So we haven't had an additional update, but everything to this point does indicate that we can expect some direction there.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Director. And seeing no further hands up, let's move on to agenda item 8.2, commitment to equity and human rights. And I'd like to call upon the director to introduce the item.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. And so, especially in light of recent occurrences and all of the items in the news and in our community, it's important for us to signal as a district the fact that work has been undertaken and has been ongoing to, in fact, make changes, create systems, dismantle systems, in the interest of improving equitable outcomes and equitable experiences for all of our students. And I would go as far as to say, Mr. Chair, that our work also reflects a commitment to equitable experiences and opportunities for staff as well. So what the chair has asked me to do is, in advance of some of the formal reports that are indeed coming to trustees, to give a verbal update as to the work that has been undertaken. I want to signal as well, before I itemize these commitments and the work that is ongoing, that some of this work actually began back in the fall, some of it in January. But as everyone at this table recognizes, this was a rather unusual year. And so there were things that were in place to either have been launched or announced that have been delayed because, of course, of the realities that we faced. So coming into next Monday, the Equity, Human Rights and Indigenous Education team has already come together over the past couple of weeks to develop a resource placemat for staff, students, and families for being able to access the kind of reading, learning, exploration that will set us up for a change in the way curriculum is delivered and experienced in September. We recognize that if we launch that kind of information in September, a window will be closed and an opportunity lost. And so we are trying to ensure, we have heard from many teachers, we have heard from many parents. Yes, you're saying that we should be doing something different, reading something different, looking at something different, but we don't know what that is. And so we are pulling together a resource that will be tabled on our website on Monday, so that people will have the opportunity to look, to ask questions, to connect to the resources as they prepare over the summer for a re-entry. That said, Monday will be a big day because Monday evening, the next report of the identity data collection, student identity data collection, will be coming to the Board of Trustees Monday evening. This is the second report from the point of view of results. The first one was a qualitative report that shared the outcome of some of the town hall and community meetings. And this one is going to be reflective of the data that has been collected, sharing a vision and a view into the demographics of the OCDSB, with the anticipation of a third report coming in the fall that will speak to some of the implications, trends, and patterns that come out of that data analysis. And so that will be forthcoming on Monday as well. Currently under development, and I'll use the term under construction because we do have a nice analogy here with roadmaps and journeys. And so we have a strategic action plan for equity, diversity, human rights, and Indigenous education that is coming forward. It's a very, very robust document that includes the research that informs the practice, but it is, and I know many trustees will appreciate this because it's what you've asked for in multiple other plans, is it has some very explicit actions with timelines as well as accountability and deliverables. And so right now, we are at a place where we are asking some of our community members, our community organizations who are a part of this equity journey, to have a look at what we have worked on. The work is essentially based on the feedback that we have received from our town hall meetings and the qualitative information that was gathered last fall, and as well as intersections with reports from other school boards, right up to and including the reports that have come out of Peel District recently, and going back as far as much earlier reports like the Royal Commission on Learning, which is almost 30 years old now. The challenge, the concern, the reality is that there are many intersections with these reports that speak to the same findings. So we have built in some specific actions, and those actions include curriculum. Those actions include recruitment. Those actions include leadership development. Those actions include policy and procedure. So those are some of the examples that are a part of what the roadmap will entail. It is intended to be a 3-year roadmap with deliverables itemized in each of the 3 years remaining, matching up with our strategic plan. The next item is somewhat of a structural shift in our organization. Last year, we took equity, Indigenous education, and English language learners out of our curriculum services, and we gave that focus explicitly to one superintendent. So there is a Superintendent Dorothy Baker, who has charge over that portfolio. And we thought that by giving it its specific focus, it will allow for, to use a term, a laser-like focus on something that is very important and has discrete knowledge attached to it. The next move will be to frame, pull together other staff who have equity, human rights in their responsibility and create a division. And that is something that will be announced specifically next year. It is important for me to really identify the fact that as you see these pieces come together, you'll recognize that while it is that we are looking at people with very discrete focus on equity, inclusion, human rights, and Indigenous education, that the expectation is that there is a staff responsibility throughout the senior team. You heard me talk about recruitment, and so we know that human resources will have a role in this. You've heard me talk about curriculum, so you know that adolescent learning and program and learning will have a role in this, but we wanted to ensure that we have a coordinated effort. Additionally, we recognize that we've been fortunate that the ministry has recognized this as a priority and has provided our school board with some opportunities that are not unique to us, but they're not offered to every public school board across the province. So one of those areas of opportunity is that we announced to trustees back in February and March that we had the Human Rights and Equity Advisor position funded for our school board. We announced that Carolyn Tanner joined us, but given the nature of the virtual distancing experience that we've been having, we haven't had the opportunity to bring Carolyn forward in pomp and circumstance, if you will. And so we anticipate doing a proper introduction in the fall when we do have all of our pieces together. We have had an additional opportunity since March of this year, again offered through the Ministry of Education, to hire an Indigenous graduation coach, so a graduation coach for Indigenous students, and 2 graduation coaches for Black students, with a focus on, again, ensuring that we are reaching out directly to students who have need. Those students, those coaches will be working 12 months. And so that means we will be able to maintain contact with, communication, support, and coaching with students who do need to be connected to our system over the summer and towards graduation. So that said, it's a nice segue into the last piece that I'll speak about today, and that is in direct connection to the trustee retreat from February. So in February, when trustees met with staff, there was what emerged was a a very pointed focus with concern around ensuring that some of our schools that are where students are impacted by poverty, that we are in fact making sure that we look carefully at how we are serving those students and that we are improving our service to those students in a more pointed, deliberate, and data-driven way. The project that is emerging is called Student Achievement Through Equity, SATE for short. And it is an inquiry model, because what we do want to do is ensure that we establish an opportunity to learn so that we are able to diffuse the learning from the work in partnership with the principals and the school community through the rest of the system, because we recognize that we have, while it is that there are some communities where there are greater challenges, that there are students all over the district in many different contexts who experience those challenges. And what we need to do is learn how to serve those students in an improved manner. And so that's being led by Superintendent Dua, who is bringing very discrete data as well as discrete research to the work. The last thing that I will say regarding all of this is built upon a foundation of research, knowledge, and data. And so it is really important that we are conveying that this is not about good feelings. This is not about intuition and hopes, that this is actually work. All of the work that I've outlined here is built on knowledge, skill, research, and data that's not necessarily just drawn from the OCDSB, but drawn from across the province, across the country. And we have looked at research that comes out of the UK as well, because they have a similar system to ours in many ways. And that said, we have already, as a senior team, started our own work and our own learning with an equity coach. She's an executive coach for executive leaders around issues of equity. She is provincially known and she works with multiple school boards. So that work started in May, and we do have a vision forward to introducing her to trustees for an opportunity with trustees, as well as an opportunity for her to do work with our principals and managers, because we recognize that this is not just the work of the curriculum leaders and academics in school, but it is also the work of our business, the business end of our organization. And so we will have, we have outlined a trajectory for our managers as well. So I'll leave it there, as I imagine there are a number of emerging questions. But that is to say that there has been work that was started right at the close of the launch of our strategic plan, and has of course picked up speed and has been informed by the things that we've been learning and experiencing over this past school year.
Thank you very much, Director. Wow, that's a ton of work. I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues. We have a question from Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to begin by thanking the director for hearing my requests so well, because although I was at least marginally aware of some of this work going on, I also was keenly aware that because of our inability to hold meetings and do a lot of the usual things, that most of our board and many of our staff were not at all aware that this work has in fact been continuing despite the shutdown. I'd like to fasten on one thing in particular, and that is with regard to the learning resources for getting in some summer reading. And that is to request whether it will be possible to provide either some reading materials or at least a list of starting places to all trustees so that we can get busy and do some of our summer reading.
So we're already on that, Trustee Scott. We have quite a robust compendium of resources. And so our discussion on Monday afternoon with the equity team is let's not overwhelm, but perhaps, trim it down a little bit. And so that is something that will be coming forward. We do recognize too that trustees will have different approaches to how they learn. And so we want to ensure that while it is, I admittedly have a penchant and a leaning towards books, that podcasts and visual opportunities are equally valuable. And so we're trying to ensure that what we offer will be something that will meet a range. So that's something we're working on getting to you soon. As we had a meeting about it, we started the collection last week and we had a meeting yesterday to have a look at where we are with that. So it's coming shortly.
Thank you very much for that. And the other thing I would like to do is to formally and very officially welcome Carolyn Tanner as our new Equity and Human Rights Advisor. I haven't had the pleasure to meet her face to face yet, but I am quite sure from what I'm hearing that everything is going to be very, very well supported. And we're really glad to have you on board, Carolyn.
Wave, Carolyn, so everyone knows it's you. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Trustee Bell. You're muted, unfortunately, Trustee Bell, sorry.
And I was speaking with such passion while I was muted there, you could see it. Okay, so I am so grateful for this update and to see everything packaged together like this. It's really incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. And then as you can tell, I'm also very excited to see a lot of these pieces come together and come forth over the next few months. And so I'm really excited to hear more about this project that Mr. Dua is leading. So I'm wondering when that's going to come about. And then I was also wondering if there is any outcome document from the retreat that is available. And then another quick question that I have, I'd love to read about all of these. So if there are memos, I will look them up. But the coaches that are starting to work or that are already working, are they available across the district? Are they place-based? And those are my questions for now. Thanks again.
Okay, so I've spoken a lot and I want to see if I can't, there are lots of people on here, so I can't see if, yes, Superintendent Baker's here. So I'd love to give her the floor because she's done some incredible work with getting our coaches hired. I just want to ensure that a part of the reason why it is that some of this hasn't come your way is because we had a little interruption in March that kind of took us off our plan. And so these coaches were actually hired during the closure period. I only met them through virtual, but they are on fire. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Baker, who will speak with great pride about the work that has happened here. Superintendent Baker.
I'm so happy to have the opportunity to do this. So indeed, we did hire during the COVID closure, and the grad coaches are assigned to specific secondary sites. And they also transition back into the feeder schools for those secondary sites. We have Kyle Morrison is the Indigenous graduation coach located at Gloucester High School. And that was a school designated by the ministry based on some of the data around self-identification and numbers. Having said that, we know that there are students across the district. And so Kyle very much working with the rest of the Indigenous education team to facilitate support for all of our students. And then we have Tess Porter, who comes to Woodruff High School and the feeder schools for Woodruff, and Suad Musa, who will be located at Ridgemont. All three coaches are also a part of transitioning forward into post-secondary, so their scope is quite significant. Their focus has been on, first of all, identifying those students on course to graduate, making sure that they have support for this particular time from them. They've also been working back into the grade 8s and also reaching out and working with and introducing themselves to community partners, some of whom they already know and some who are new to our district needed to meet. And so they've been very busy in that regard. They've met with students. They've had several meetings with students at all three high schools. And they're very engaged in the summer learning program, and through continuing education, they'll be supporting specifically students through some of those programs and reach ahead credits and literacy and numeracy support. So we are very excited to have them come aboard and are anticipating that their work will be integral to supporting students in our district. Oh, and I will say that there is, we do have an introduction for trustees so that you'll get a more fulsome understanding of their role and what their specific mandate is. Whoops.
All right. Any further questions for the director on?
So just the other question was the project, when we could expect to hear about the project and if there were any official documents coming out or anything coming out of the retreat.
Sorry, Trustee Bell, yes. So in terms of the project, that is, we are building forward with that. We are kind of at the ground with the schools right now. A critical path has been created. The design has come forward to the Directors Executive Council over the last 3 weeks. So we do anticipate that once it is that we have confirmed the design and we've identified the schools where we're going to start, it's certainly something that will come forward probably as early as September, just to give trustees the information to say that here's where we've started. But we certainly do want to make this make it known that this is a part of the work and that it is very much rooted not just in service but in learning. I hope that trustees are able to hear the pattern and the things that we've been talking about here. That our core business is the success of students, and so everything goes back to how it is we have enhanced our service and our work for students to enable every student to meet their own potential. And so you will hear that these projects have that as the through line. From the point of view of the report from the retreat, typically we do have a report. The retreat took place in February. And so it was a very robust meeting with significant discussion, but you will recall timing that shortly thereafter, we were thrown into a different reality. I do know that we had started a report, and to be honest, I don't remember us bringing it forward because I know a number of our committee of the whole meetings were suspended shortly after that time. I don't know, Executive Officer Giroux, if you have a recollection on where we are with that, but we certainly can include that in our next step planning. If I could turn it to Executive Officer Giroux.
I was just looking for the report. I did find it in my inbox, and as the director said, I was looking to see if it made its way onto an agenda. It was scheduled for March the 24th. It was a discussion report, so it wouldn't necessarily have followed up on one of our emergency planning reports or agendas, but we'll take a look. Even in its draft form, it's got a good summary of the discussion, and if it wasn't released publicly, we can share it with you for information.
Thanks, Michelle.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion on that item, let's move on to move on to the agenda. And the next item, information items, report from OPSPA representatives. Trustee Boothby, anything public to report this evening?
No, Chair, nothing to report.
Thank you very much. Item 9.2, new ministry initiatives update. Director?
Nothing further other than the ones that have already been reported.
Thank you very much. OSTA update. Anything to report on Ottawa Student Transportation Authority? It says director, but maybe Superintendent Carson, or sorry, CFO Carson could provide some insight.
Okay, Mike, do you want to go ahead, or I can start? At the moment, OSTA is doing something similar to what we are doing as a senior team, and that is essentially turning its mind to how to plan forward for transportation upon the return. So at this point, that's what I can report from OSTA in terms of an update. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I'll add, there is an OSTA board meeting next Wednesday to try to, where there are activities that may require approval of the OSTA board. Ms. Kiriako and Mr. Hellman have been meeting with the superintendent of business at the Catholic board, myself, on a regular basis, trying to look at a variety of scenarios that might fall out as we hear more from the ministry. They've also been working individually with staff in LSS and with the superintendencies with some of our most vulnerable students, trying to look for strategies and to consult with Ottawa Public Health and ourselves about how transportation might unfold in the fall.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 10. Seeing no questions on the OSTA report, moving on to item 10, long range agenda. And Executive Officer Drew, anything to add on the long range agenda?
I would simply say that in terms of upcoming meetings, we have a meeting scheduled for next week. I'll note that the meeting is Monday, June the 22nd. It's a board meeting. We have a fulsome agenda, so in camera and public meeting. We will be, as the director indicated, presenting the report on the identity-based data. We will also have a budget item. We have a couple of policy issues, and we have a number of celebrations or recognitions. The Student Recognition Awards will be announcing those, and the Community Recognition Awards. So they won't be presentations, but we'll be excited to announce those names to the community. We will have a public board meeting on the 29th of June with regards to the Code of Conduct investigation that's currently underway. When we have the discussion on Monday about the budget, we will also be talking about future budget meetings. We know that we're going to have budget meetings over the summer. And at the last budget committee, we looked at a schedule of possibly July or August meetings. We'll know better once we get the GSNs, which of those scenarios is the most likely. But in either case, I think we can anticipate that by mid to late August, there will be the need for the board to have some kind of meetings to plan looking forward to the new year. We will also be on Monday night looking to extend the extraordinary meetings provision with respect to COVID-19 updates. And so that will be on your agenda as well. So a few items there. And in the next week or so, we anticipate releasing a memo to trustees, or maybe at the meeting on Monday, with regards to meeting schedules next year. We've been thinking about our meeting schedules and how we will continue to manage the idea of full public meetings in the boardroom at this point. currently precluded because of the emergency orders, but going forward, there would have to be some adjustments to that meeting space to ensure safety, and the need to have flexibility for in-person and online meetings is something we're trying to grapple with. That adds more to the complexity. So we'll come back with a proposal for you on how to deal with some of those issues.
All right, thank you very much. Guess we got our work cut out for us over the summer. It's a little bit of an unusual year, right? So, but you know, I know that, you know, the rest of us ourselves, trustees are very much in the realm to make it happen. So moving on to item 11, new business. Is there any new business? And seeing none, we've come to the end of our agenda. And so I'd like to say thank you very much, everyone, for attending this Zoom meeting. And I would declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you and good night.